like the marriage of the mob back then and the FBI and their handlers. Now that we have freedom of information and some other stuff, it's at the very least you got to at least think and say, hey, wait a second, what's going on here? So give us your thoughts on the whole Scarpa thing and him being the high value informant.
I mean, he was the first one that really did damage, and that's probably why we saw so much talk in the media about the Colombo crime family. It wasn't, it wasn't that they were doing any more than any of these other families.
Yeah,
it was just more the potential that they had to get the stories out from someone that was working within the organization. So a lot of the stuff about Joe Colombo, even the stuff about the Gallo-Profaci war. I think he started in '63, but it doesn't mean that the information that he was giving them, the structure and the understanding, it could date back to before that. A lot of the problems that I had with Scarpa and some of the things he said is that all these men they're being paid to tell story.
Correct.
So, like myself.
Yeah.
So the more story I come up with, the more I'm going to get paid. And the more that they learn to work the system, the more the credibility just disappears. So I can totally respect the FBI for what they do in one aspect, because they're starting off by saying that they want to fight crime. They want to help society become a better place.
Correct.
But then at some other spot, this just becomes a giant game of Monopoly.
Yes.
And they monopolize the tax dollars so that they can create this facade that they're fighting crime, but crime doesn't disappear. You don't fight crime at the top level. It's kind of like a Ponzi scheme that we're caught up in with the FBI and the organized crime task force that we see. And then if we fast forward to 2021, and you look at how far they've taken this, take the rapper Tekashi 6ix9ine, right?
Yeah.
So they make an informant out of a SoundCloud rapper who's flashing money and girls and all the stuff, and they killed someone and they talked about it on the phone and they get this kid to completely walk scot-free, being involved with a street gang that was involved in multiple murders and drug dealing, right? So just take that for one micro.
Yeah.
And tell me, what is that a billboard for? That is a billboard for young children to go out and kill the streets, have no loyalty, no honor, no code, and know they can get off the hook by telling on someone.
Wow, you're right.
To stop crime, that's a farce. This is
now
not stopping crime.
Now, this leads an easy transition to Sammy the Bull. You've been pretty vocal about Sammy. I had him on the show. I just had Judge Gleason on, I'm kind of, my current rabbit hole is I've dealt a lot with informants and having former people on, but I've been doing more, journalists, authors, which I love, and then a little bit of law enforcement. Law enforcement sees Sammy and informants much differently than less civilians or even mob guys. Where do you land on Sammy? And you have some pretty strong thoughts about that. I've seen it on some other interviews.
Yeah, I mean, I think that he just felt that he was the chosen one. It's a very narcissistic way to live your life, to believe that you're more important than others. And everyone thinks there's something heroic about losing your loyalty to save yourself, because that guy was going to do something bad. We all know John Gotti wasn't going to snitch, right? Yeah. Now, whether Sammy had to die for things that he did, no kid on Instagram that takes a picture with him and promotes him as this, this hero, Ragnar Lothbrok killer that became an informant. You don't know what happened inside that criminal organization that led John to some of those words. You just don't. You never will. You're not a criminal.
Correct.
And if you were a criminal, you weren't a criminal at the level those men were at. Okay, so for anyone to just kind of sum it all up in the fact that it was, Gotti was going to do it in two sentences, I can't even speak to people like that, because it's like you're trying to talk about, something metaphysical when you know nothing about the elementary stuff, right?
Correct.
And Sammy understands that he's not what he says he is. It's nothing that he's not been hit with before. And when I say that, I mean in respect to you don't just take out Gotti. This is not a one for one. Yeah. You sat on so many trials and put so many men away, and you became their pawn. And you even with your own family members and the case that he had in Arizona, it's just, and then he goes and tries to profit from it with a book, and now he's got a YouTube channel, and he wants to, he's got a problem with fame, and that is attributed to the narcissism. So it's a whole it's called splitting, and it's a whole psychological disorder that he suffers from. And look, yes, he's outlived a lot of these guys. If that makes you a success in life, then more power to him. I just don't, I can't agree with anything that he's done, because even though I'm younger